The content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your mental or physical health. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and do not replace personalized care from a licensed professional.
Welcome to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante, a space where a nurse practitioner and educator shares real talk on mental wellness, mindfulness, and navigating life in and out of healthcare. Let's take a moment to breathe, reflect, and grow together.
Very important, guys, to start slow, go steady. No, it's not a fast race. We're all in this together.
There's a lot of anxiety, depression, and PTSD going on. So just need to make sure that our message as a provider is heard by our minority patients. Making sure that we are here for you.
Hello, everyone, and I hope everyone is having a mindful moments. Welcome 2026. I have a very special guest today, and our episode title today is From the ED, Emergency Department to Executive Leadership, Carving Your Own Nursing Path with one and only Dr. Rayne Soriano from Oahu, Hawaii. Am I correct, Dr. Rayne?
Yes, Peter, yes.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast. I know that we met each other at the FADLN in New York, and now you agreed to be one of my highly esteemed podcasts. Aside from me being Pangasinense, our commonality is that we also have a father that speaks Pangasinan.
Right.
Well, or I should say Pangalatok. And another thing is that you really started from the very beginning. That's one of our commonalities. So the first thing that I would like to ask you, and the audience would like to know, is why did you want to become a nurse? And as you know, many Filipino parents usually push their kids to go into nursing, seeing it as a real job or a path to stability. Did that play a role for you, Dr. Rayne?
Oh my God. As you mentioned, our parents are so influential, right? And I'm the oldest of 5 boys in my family. And so I'm like the third parent, right, growing up. So I was born and raised in Baguio City. We immigrated to California in 1984, actually. So my dad, my late father, he worked at least two jobs all his life. So in a way, I was like the third parent in my family, Pedro. And so, growing up, when you're the oldest and, you take care of your siblings, right? I took care of my mom, you take care, of the household, when your dad is away. And so, I think, you know, caregiving and caring for others was all already a part of my life and my culture. Right? Our culture, we care for others already as part of the Filipino culture, our communities, right, our village, whatever the case may be. And so I think growing up, I always knew, Pedro, I wanted to go into some sort of a caring, or service-oriented profession. I just didn't know what that looked like. And then one day, I think I was a junior or senior in high school. My mom said, Rain, if I was able to, pursue my career, because she cared for her 9 siblings growing up as well. So she was always working or, caring for her family. She said, I would have loved to, pursue nursing. And I think that planted a seed in me, my friend, that, I said, oh, nursing. I never thought of, nursing as a career path. And sure enough, I explored it more. My dad's siblings who live in New York are also nurses. They're retired nurses now, and so being surrounded by nurses and relatives who are nurses who spoke so highly of our profession in terms of the opportunities and the experiences that they've had, it became my pathway as well. So I think I credit my mom, Pedro, in
Mhm.
terms of her influence in pursuing nursing.
Thank you. Credit to the mom, and I think we have that commonality too. My mom really wanted to become a nurse, so she's also the reason why I went to nursing school. I think mothers knows best, as they said,
Yeah,
huh?
that's right. That's right. You want to disobey your mom.
Yes, I think we're very obedient with that
That's
matter.
right. That's right, Pedro.
And it seems like in our Filipino culture, nursing is like in our DNA, right? You don't see a hospital without a Filipino nurse there.
That's right.
That's
That's
for sure.
right. That's right. It's a growing, and it's good to see that, it's a global profession, not just in the United States, but
Mm.
as you know, we have colleagues in the Middle East, in Europe, and all over the world, really. And it's one of the things that I think is makes me proud as a Filipino is, the fact that we are experts in caring for others. And what a noble cause, right? And a legacy to leave behind. And so, yeah, it's a growing profession, certainly in the Filipino community, and it feels like whenever I go to work, at least, or whenever I go to a hospital, you can't help but feel at home because you can always relate to someone.
Sure. Like when you go to the hospital or any setting, there's Filipino, there's so much potluck going on, or there's
Yeah,
so much relatability at
that's
work. So it
right.
seems like it's home for us, not just
Right.
work per se.
That's right.
Yeah. Like they turn to become our work besties or our kababayan besties.
Yes,
Work.
yes, our family for sure.
Yes. Thank you for that. And was there a moment when nursing shifted from our obligation to a calling or vice versa for you?
Oh gosh, ever since my mom planted that seed of becoming a nurse, Pedro, I think for me, to make her proud that I was, carrying on her dream. And then as I learned more about the profession and started to take classes and, go to school, I felt like it became a calling, especially, when we started our clinical rotation, because you soon realize that your job is to be with people in their most challenging and often their darkest moments. And, oftentimes they don't have someone to hold their hand or to be at the bedside when, they give birth to their first baby or, they are having their last breath. Oftentimes we're it. We become that family and that hand that they hold. And so I think that's when it started to become more of a calling, Pedro, and I started to realize that, we're going to be in a lot of challenging situations with patients and with their families. And often the news we have to give isn't always good news. Most of the time, they get to be discharged or, they get to go home. But, a lot of times, as you know, we coordinate hospice care or palliative care, or, we're working with the coroner's office and it's these are tough situations that I think, can lead to, a lot of stress and certainly the burnout that we see, especially the more you're in these environments.
I agree with you. And basically, nursing is not for everybody. It's a calling, and we want to focus also on service, right? A lot of potential students that we can like interview when they go into nursing school. I just want to share this on the academic point too, also, is that sometimes they always say about the financial stability, but I think that should be the second because money will come next after service. If you deliver a good service, then money comes back to you at the same time.
Well, and then, what we learned too is, like you said, the money and the financial stability is certainly there. But
Mhm.
if you're not enjoying what you do and you're stressed and anxious about, doing your job, that money is going to go to things like therapy, hopefully not but what we saw during the pandemic, right? Drugs, alcohol,
Mm,
a lot of things to just keep people, you know, from suffering. And I think, a lot of these coping things that, people, will spend money on because now it's like, gosh, no, I'm so burnt out or I'm so stressed out that
mm,
I can't even enjoy, my life when I'm not working. And so you can certainly make a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, if you don't have that balance or if you don't have that joy of what you do, and I think again, as we see with our kababayans everywhere, the
mm,
ones who are successful and enjoy what they do and do it because they have a purpose, a calling, like you said, Pedro, and a passion, the
mm,
money and the fame and those things come. But if you're not enjoying it, it shows, right? It shows in your
mm,
practice. It shows in the way you don't engage your patients or your coworkers. It's like they can tell. It's like, oh, this person obviously doesn't enjoy or they,
mm.
don't really like being a nurse or doing the job that they're in. And I don't know how much your sanity and your well-being and your, those things are worth, but more than money, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I agree with you that there are current studies right now, and I just want to share the statistics that studies show very high levels of burnout, depression, and stress among ED nurses and physicians due to the intense clinical environment. Burnout prevalence varies widely, with some studies showing up to
Mm,
71.4% experiencing burnout and significant proportions reporting stress or depression. And in global surveys of thousands of nurses, work related anxiety ranged between 23% and 61%, while work related exhaustion was reported at least 57%.
mm,
And they also did a lot of studies in emergency nursing settings, which report high rates of anxiety around 39.1%, depression around 24.6%, and stress around 8.8% among staff. And I know you're working as an ED manager, right? In Kaiser Permanente, and you're in the executive leadership. What is your observation, and do you see this current trend right now?
Yeah, well, gosh, I left the emergency department a while back, my friend, but still maintain relationships with many colleagues and leaders in that setting. And I think, again, when you look at our population, the aging of our population, we keep an eye out of that 2030 year because that's when we'll have the most baby boomers and the least amount of nurses in our population. And so that's a critical time. And that's why there's so many new grad programs and residencies happening now to try to even keep up with that demand, that growing demand. But I think between the aging of our population, the illnesses, the social and economic, and the disparities that we see that cause things like homelessness, drug use, alcoholism, the human trafficking, those types of things that we see and deal with. So these are beyond just clinical, challenges now. We're talking about social, global, issues,
Mhm.
Pedro, as you know, and then technology, and we were talking a lot about technology and AI, and I spent a lot of time in the informatics world. That also has been a cause, I think, of stress, not just for nurses, but for, our physician colleagues, because now you're not just at the bedside, but you have to answer all these emails. You have so many devices that are alerting you and notifying you, and the information is just like this floodgate of
Mhm.
information that you hope that you don't miss anything or you don't harm someone because you didn't use a technology correctly. And so, as technology evolves in our critical care environments and in the emergency settings, it's, And then with the lack or the resources we need in education, and taking the time to step away from the bedside so that I can be competent and actually know what I'm doing with these new tools and technologies, it's stressful. And so it's no wonder our environment has only become more complex, my friends. So people are getting older, they're getting sicker. It's not just medical, it's mental health, as you're an expert in,
Mm,
Pedro. And,
mm.
now we have all this technology that's coming into our environments. And somehow we have to connect all of those dots and know what we're doing and still be present and caring as much as we can. So it's a hard environment for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I know that they said when you become a nurse, you have to toughen it out, right? You gotta learn how to survive and swim our own way,
Yeah.
especially for those who are immigrants or internationally educated nurses
Mhm.
coming in here. They may have some
Yeah.
transition or a gap between the practice that they used to and now they're
Right.
transitioning here. So
That's
it's
right.
really good that they're affiliated with like sample organizations like the Philippine Nurse Association. And
Right.
shout out to Dr. Babagahol and Dr. Marlon Soria, who's really
Right.
like doing a lot of work and different subchapters all throughout the US, which are very effective tool as support to our kababayans.
That's right. That's right, Pedro.
Thank you. I love this talk. And we know that from the very beginning, your journey eventually took you to emergency department, right? When you think back to your early years in the ED, what kind of nurse were you trying to be, and what did the environment demand you mentally and emotionally?
Ah. I always tell people, especially now with our new nurses or new grads, right, Pedro, they always ask, what specialty? How do I know what specialty I'm gonna do or pursue? And I always tell them it's like anything else. For me, it matched my personality and my approach to work. It's like I was good at a lot of things. I was never a master of, kind of that jack of all trades, master of none. So for me, and then, my mind was always racing, so I could never just focus on one thing. And so when I did my final clinicals, Pedro in the ED, I said, wow, this is the place I can see myself thriving and succeeding, because you just never know what's going to come in the door. It was always a great challenge to try and triage and assess and build a relationship as quickly as possible to figure out, is this someone who's going through a crisis or an emergent condition, or can they wait in the waiting room, or do we, triage them to another clinic or another service? And so for me, that mental challenge of problem solving quickly, and then having the skills and the relationships with the team to help, with when crisis, happens. And so for me, it was a match. That environment for me was a match, Pedro. And that's why I loved emergency medicine as my specialty. But I think the mental challenges, as you pointed out, is when you're in those environments of crisis for prolonged periods of time. And, just again, you're experiencing a lot of traumatic things, both physically and mentally, that people go through. And I don't think, a lot of us take the time to really debrief and heal from a lot of the stress and the anxiety and the sadness and the loss that we experience. We often go home, you're trying to pretend that you're okay. I know for myself, I experienced, a lot of that, feeling like you were numb to life sometimes, because you'd experience so much crisis and sadness and pain, in your work. And as you know, we spend so much time at work, sometimes we spend more time at work than at home, that you become numb. And I think those are the first signs of burnout, is when you start to become numb in your own life, just to try to protect yourself from falling apart. And so I think those are a big part of those challenges, Pedro, that I experienced and that many experience. I think when you're in critical environments where you experience a lot of trauma, and, you work so long, without taking a break or a vacation, or if you have no one to talk to, it becomes a very dangerous situation.
Thank you for sharing that, emphasizing that we know that we are in a high stress,
Yeah,
high demand job, and especially in our workplace demands that a lot of also nurses have experienced high turnover, job dissatisfaction, and also intention to leave.
that's right.
Also, executives like you, according to studies, have are not immune. Around quarter experience depressive symptoms, and many report isolation and performance impacts linked to stressors. How do you think this needs to be addressed currently at this situation?
Oh, that's a great question, Pedro. And I think for me, again, talk about calling. After working in different areas of leadership, nursing leadership,
Mhm.
it does become isolating, and you feel often like, am I the only one, experiencing this or going through this? And you don't have a team like you do during the shift, right? You don't have people readily available to say, hey, can I talk to you? Often you're leading from behind a desk or in a computer, in these virtual environments. And I've been blessed to have leaders and mentors and bosses who have been supportive and who've been open to talking. But for me, that's where my work now in caring science, has really led me to a lot of the resilience, what we call equanimity, that calm amidst the storm, and that feeling of just being authentically present and caring about ourselves as much as we care for others. Because if we can't care for ourselves, then don't be surprised that you get burnt out, that you become frustrated, and feel like you're numb to what's happening. And so for me, I think being connected to caring science and learning a lot of practices in terms of self-care, wellness, heart led practices, really to build your resilience. And then, of course, caring for the caregiver is such an honorable part of our jobs, because although we're not at the bedside any longer, our job, our responsibility is to care for those who are still at the bedside and who are in these traumatic and challenging experiences every day. And so that the pressure for us to make sure that we do our rounds, that we talk to people and build these relationships and make sure we have our pulse on if people are doing okay is very high, because they're important, to come back and do the same thing every day as our population needs it, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for emphasizing that. I think the cornerstone of nursing being caring, and it's an art and science as per se is defined.
Yes.
If I'm a new grad nurse as unit staff nurse, also dealing with my own mental health, I think I could not cater or serve my patients well if I'm
Sure.
dealing with those things or barriers. And I think that what you're doing right now is a tool that we could utilize to avoid burnout from happening.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely, Pedro. And then when you look at, like our, contract with society, when you look at our ethical, responsibilities or nurses, practice, nursing practice and requirements, it's self-care and wellness is such a big part of that, because of the work that we do and the experiences that we have, our code of ethics, provision 5, it's all about how a requirement that we care for ourselves, as much as we care for others. And had to read that again, and it's like, wow, we have to take this seriously, especially if we have any hopes of lasting in our profession, knowing that our environment and the times are only going to get more complex and more challenging. So how do we prepare ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually? And so again, part of our culture and for me is faith and prayer, and so that's been a big part of my life and my survival as well, my friend. And so we can't forget those things.
Yes, and basically we need to make sure that we are putting an emphasis to on this caring
Yeah,
attitude, and at the same time, because come what may, that in the future you could end up being the patient, and you want to make sure that the
right.
ones that taking care of you is also practicing this in order for you um feel better, right? I think the caring science will be effective if we apply it not only with evidence-based practice, but also you're taking care of your patient and seeing them in a different aspect or level.
That's right, Pedro.
Now, nurses often hide mental struggles to appear strong. What caring science practice have you used to foster psychological safety and make
Mm.
vulnerability feel safe?
Ooh, so, as you know, my friend, caring science, the way you practice caring science is through Dr. Watson's Caritas processes. And one of my favorite, processes is, the ability, Caritas process number 5, which is the ability to talk about both the good things and the bad things. And so when we talk about, having a just culture or a speak up culture, to be able to talk about, and be vulnerable, like you said, to talk about, hey, I don't know, the answer, or I don't feel prepared, or but let me work on that, or let me find you someone who is, or let me find those answers. Because to try and pretend that you know everything, or that everything's okay, and not be able to talk about it when it's not okay, or to be able to escalate or report something that could potentially harm yourself or your family member or someone else, those are dangerous environments. And so I think, a big part of my motivation to also pursue leadership, Pedro, is
Mhm.
to, build those environments and to foster those environments, so that whether you are a new grad, or someone who, struggles with explaining, a situation, or scared to complain or to escalate something, to build environments where you feel welcome, you feel like you're included, you feel like you can speak up no matter what job or role you have in the department or that hospital or in your organization, and to truly be present. I think that's another piece of caring
Mhm.
science, is how do you become genuinely and authentically present, so you're listening first before trying to solve somebody else's problems, that you're truly absorbing how they're feeling. We talk about emotional intelligence, right? It's like, okay, how do they feel about this? And then how are we aware of how this affects them when, like you said, when they come to work, how does this anxiety, this stress, this pain or sorrow affect someone when they're trying to care for other people? And so as a leader, it's like to try to connect those dots and keep that in mind. Like you said, how many of us come to work and pretend like everything's okay? How many of us, again, part of our culture is we don't want to be a burden to anyone else,
Mhm.
our families, or our coworkers, or we want to, be the one to, I'll help you no matter what. But at what costs? We have this martyrdom oftentimes, where we sacrifice our own well-being and our own mental health, for the sake of caring for others. And I think, that's a big part of our culture as well, that shows up in the workplace, as you know. So yeah, so a lot of the caring science practice is how do we care for ourselves, and be genuinely and authentically present, so we have environments that you can talk about the good, the bad, and then work together to, create a healing environment where, we get back to normal, or a positive outcome.
Yeah, and I wish this was introduced to me when I was starting as a nurse. I think it will probably, if I'm looking at my old self, I will be less stressed at that time. I will not be producing a lot of cortisol
Me too.
levels as a
Me
nurse
too.
because at that time I always say, yes, I can do this. I can cover all the
Right?
shifts. I
Yeah,
can
I'll
work
stay
two to
over.
three jobs and stuff like that. So you always say yes,
That's
but
right.
it's always important to set boundaries. And I think
Yep.
in Filipino culture, and we always say yes just to please others and be the nice one,
That's right.
nice nurse or nice person. But remember, there's boundaries between being nice and being good.
That's
Being
right.
nice is you're a people pleaser. I think I was able to outgrow that. But being good means setting your boundaries. And that's one thing that I think every Filipino nurses and our kababayans needs to learn too, that
That's right.
it's okay
That's
to
right.
say no
It's
for the
okay
sake
to.
of our mental health.
That's right. That's right. And and again, not just being nice, but hard work, right? We want to be the hardest working and the most dedicated and the most loyal. And so often we try to prove that by not saying no, like you
Mhm.
said, Pedro. But again, we're getting sick, we're suffering, our blood pressures are out of control. We have gout, but we're still working. Because we
Yes,
haven't had
and
a vacation. So
well,
we suffer, silently through those things.
yeah, we show up, and they said, "Fake it till you make it."
That's it. That's it.
Always a cliche, but it's basically true that a lot of our nurses out there are always showing up at work and putting all their problems behind them and
Yeah,
masking their
that's it.
feelings and showing up with the best of their ability.
That's right. That's right, Pedro. And at what cost, right? So,
Yes. So we really need to identify that. How has your identity as a Filipino shaped moments when you felt conflicted or pressured as a leader?
hmm. Yeah, you know, um, that's a great question. And I think for me, a lot of it again goes back to being comfortable with with my values, our culture in terms of just the importance of not just hard work, but our integrity, our reputation, and again, it's for me, it's always being raised to know that there's always someone watching and someone always listening to what you say and what you do. And when you say and promise something, your word is so important, that when you say you're going to do something, you want to do it. And if you can't do it, be honest about it, and I think, for me, Pedro, a lot of the cultural things of, um, we talk a lot about diversity, right? And in the Philippines, we have such diversity even within our own cultures. And, whether you're, what part of the Philippines are you from? And, and then now we have the generational aspects of, our culture. So for me, I'm always learning. It's like I have my values and the things I was raised and brought up, and the things like my parents, taught me and what I learned being a Filipino. But then in the generations today, again, this is part of how you're genuinely and authentically present is you're always learning. You know to be humble. That's another part of our culture, humility, right? And being humble to know that you don't know everything. And so not being scared to ask questions and to admit that, yeah, I was wrong. Now that I understand where you're coming from, I was wrong and thank you for teaching me that. And so those are a lot of things I think for me, challenged me as well because again, you want to prove, especially when you're new in the profession or new in leadership, you want to prove that you know it, that you're willing to work hard, that you have the answers and you're the go-to person. And, eventually you're not going to know what you're doing and you're not going to know the answers. And so for me, it's having that humility to admit that, I don't know everything, but then what do you do with that? Then you go and meet people that are experts and that know that those answers that you can then go to help other people. And so for me, I've been blessed, Pedro, in that, through my different chapters in my career, again, part of our culture is connecting people. And you mentioned potlucks, right? We like to celebrate and bring people together. And I think for my career and for my journey, it's how do we connect people, from past jobs and different departments and different hospitals, different organizations, so that we help each other and that we have this joint collaboration to solve problems, and so I think that's also a big part of our culture that, again, if you work in isolation, it's tough, right? There's an African proverb that says, if you want to, go fast, you can go by yourself, but if you want to go far, you have to go together, right? And go with others. And so, I think our culture, believes strongly in that as well.
Yes, and I think the pakikisama and
Hmm.
also the bayanihan in
That's right.
times of
That's
needs,
right.
and also known to be resilient, right? We're known to be doing everything and still smile and still have this positive demeanor, and
Yeah,
it shows the especially when we take care of our patients well. So thank you
that's right.
for emphasizing being in the present moment. I think a lot of us sometimes tend to be dwelling into the past
Hmm.
or overthinking of about the future, but not
Right.
basically being in the present moment.
Right.
And
That's
being
right.
mindful is very important.
That's right, Pedro.
Now, Dr. Rain, I know you live and work in Hawaii, and it has surely shaped your perspective. I love Hawaii, by the way. Oahu is the best one. How has the place itself influenced your approach to nursing, leadership, and well-being?
Oh man, Pedro, we actually moved here in, before the pandemic, right before, like,
Mm,
well, actually, right when the pandemic started, because it's like we didn't know if the bucket list was still going to be around. We had no idea what the world was going to look like, if this pandemic was going to end. And so we said, if we're not going to try this now as a family, and my kids, I have three boys, they were really young. So we said, hey, let's transfer to Hawaii. And I had the blessing of working at Kaiser here in Hawaii. And now I work again with our colleagues in Northern California. But again, you connect people, right? The people and the jobs of your past become part of your network, your Rolodex. For those that still know what a Rolodex is. So you continue to connect people and resources, and so for me, there's a word here I wrote down. It's a Kuleana. Kuleana means responsibility. And so when I think about our profession, we have a responsibility and an ethical responsibility to the patients that we serve, the communities that we serve, and as leaders to the staff and our teams that we serve. But personally, as a Filipino as well, and as a father, as a brother, as a son, we have also a kuleana or responsibility to our families, and so, for me, it's, living and working in Hawaii or from Hawaii, you learn that the most important things aren't your status or your title or your degrees. No, the most important thing here and the values here are you value the elderly, you value the community. It's always family first, and so that's brought a lot of balance and meaning to my life because, it's in our careers, right? You want to keep climbing that ladder and keep accomplishing. And, here we are, fellows now, in the academy. And so,
yeah.
we want to keep, working. But then it's like, well, at the end of the day, what's really important, as we get older and we are at the countdown on the other side of our life, it's like, do we want to be remembered by how much we worked and how much we accomplished professionally, or do we want to be remembered as a great father, a great family member, someone who was there when our loved ones needed us most, and so it's that balance, that juggling act that we always have. So I think working and living here has really brought a sense of that balance for me, Pedro. And so, and of course, a love of nature and the environment, and the history and the cultural history behind that, and how important those things are as well, my friend.
Yes, the food, the people, the
That's right.
views. Oh my God. I wish I could also live in Hawaii.
You're
Um,
welcome anytime, Pedro.
yes.
You
We
always have a home here.
Yeah, we always visit like once a year, and we really love the people and the food, and also a lot of like good spots, hiking spots too.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
food is top notch, like all those shebais and also all those fruits and vegetables that we tried. Like every time we
yeah.
go to Hawaii,
Uh,
we always go to our friend and they cook like traditional Filipino food. And we're
that's
like,
right.
oh my God, this tastes like home. Like every time I go there. Um, my childhood memories or my childhood inner childhood mind is reactivated, like, hey, this
Yeah.
is the taste of my pinakbet and the
Mm,
taste of
that's right.
my
That's
authentic
right.
food that I'm craving for, that we don't get it here in Los Angeles because frozen foods and stuff like that,
Yeah.
we don't get those kind of experience. So
Yeah.
go to Hawaii, guys. Try everything. You'll love it.
And you know what's also beautiful is that the Filipinos who migrated here to Hawaii, have their own history and their own stories, right? Working in the sugarcane fields or the farms, and so, there's also a richness and a uniqueness of Filipinos who have migrated here and who have generational, because, it's so expensive, just like in California, it's so expensive to live here. There's a lot of multi-generational households. And so again, part of that culture of taking care of our parents when they get older, it's very much a part of our values and our culture here as well. Because like for me, my mom lives with me ever since my father passed away, during the pandemic. I take care of my mom, and that's to me normal. That's a part of our culture, and again, it helps when you're a nurse, but sometimes knowing too much also is scary, right? And so I think just the community, the love for nature, the love for family, for being kind is the aloha spirit is to be kind to others no matter what. It very much helps my blood pressure stay low, my friend. So
That's, that's amazing. I think if you're surrounded by nature, according to me,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it reduces your stress levels, right?
it does.
Yeah.
It certainly does. It certainly does.
When we talk about longevity of lifespan, I think Hawaii versus the city, I think they should do a study on this one too. And I definitely agree that I think the longevity or the lifespan is longer if you
Yeah,
are less stressed, right?
that's
Because
right.
less
That's right.
diabetes, hypertension, anxiety, cardiovascular
Right. That's right.
disorders. So
Less
it makes a
less
lot
road
of
rage,
sense.
less freeways.
Yes. When we're sitting on the freeway 405 and 5, oh my
Oh yeah,
God,
did that for a long
take you
time.
forever. But in Hawaii, you guys are actively walking,
You
engaging,
have to.
hiking.
You have to for sure.
Mm, that's good. And looking back from your Filipino roots to the ED to leading thousands of nurses, what is one lesson about mental health, resilience, or leadership that you wish everyone in nursing truly understood?
Mm, that's a great question, Pedro. And I think it goes just to go back to our profession as a calling, and to always know your purpose, that there's I'm a strong believer in that the universe, God, we are where we are for a reason and for a purpose. In fact, one of Jean Watson in Caring Science, one of her famous sayings, I always have it right here. She always says, maybe this one moment with this one person is the very reason we're here on earth at this time. And so when I think about destiny and our purpose, it's, no matter what job or role or, title or, whatever you're doing, it's know that you're there for a purpose and that you're important and that you're enough, that you are a light to others, whether that's one person or your community or to thousands of nurses, as you mentioned, Pedro, that what you do is important. And I think when people get burnt out or when people lose their sight of their purpose or the meaning of or the importance of what they do, that's where I think things turn dark, right, for us. And so I'm so blessed in that my work now is to help our kababayans and our colleagues either rekindle that purpose or be reminded or stay connected to that purpose, and to build a community around that we have to be connected and care for ourselves as much as we care for others, because we're important. What we do is important, who we are is important. And I think knowing that and just being who you are, and that being enough every day, and knowing that you're important to whether it's one person or many people, that's so important to know, and so important to keep waking up and coming back to do what we do while we can, right? Because life is short. And so just enjoy the moment, celebrate when we can, and be kind. At the end of the day, be kind to yourself and continue on this journey, my friend. And so it's been a blessing, Pedro.
Yes, thank you so much for those kind of words of affirmation. I know that a lot of our listeners out here really need to know that they are not alone, that they are enough. All of those words that you said are basically resonating to me, and it feels like it's healing my trauma or healing others' trauma in the past that
Yeah,
they hurt in silence. Like
yeah,
they
that's
feel
right.
like they don't want to be a burden. You're correct with that. They don't want to be burden to their family members, to their
That's right.
partners, to their coworkers, to their leaders. But the vulnerability and then the authenticity and are important too
That's
because we're
right.
just human, and it's always important to be kind.
That's right, Pedro. And so thank you for all you do. I know, you're constantly, helping others with their mental health and, a lot of and it's so important. And so please make sure to take care of yourself, as well, my friend. And so, we're all connected now. So, anytime you need to just talk or laugh, or surf, you always have a place here, my friend.
Yes, thank you so much for that invitation, and for sure we will meet each other. And definitely, if they're feeling that they're so stressed out at work and they need the time out, I think we can put a recommendation: go to Hawaii, and the aloha spirit is
Right.
waiting for you, right?
That's right. That's right. Saltwater heals.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Now, I want to also ask you some personal questions if you don't
Sure.
mind me asking. You're a dad, you're a
Hmm.
leader, and also you're wearing so many hats, right? Dad, leader, you're a husband. I met your wife too during
Yes.
the FADLN ceremony.
Yes.
Now, when was the last time that you told yourself that this is something that I'm recognizing that I'm struggling with my mental health, or the last time you've cried?
Oh man, Pedro, I think. Oh, that's a good question. I think as things change in our world or at work or in life, for me, I struggle sometimes because again, as the eldest, as the father, the husband, the son, whatever, we want to make sure everyone's okay, right? We want to make sure everything's perfect, and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves when things aren't perfect or when things don't go the way we want to. So I think for me it's always a struggle, and I think right now um, for me, it's how to be present, as my sons grow up, how do we make sure I don't miss anything important in their life, or how do I assure I'm there when they need to talk or when they need help, knowing I also have to travel and work and do a lot of the things in order for them to, get a good head start in life. As well. So we're breadwinners. We have to, just like our parents, right? The sacrifice that our parents did for us. I feel that that's very much the chapter of my life where I am now. And so I think I struggle in that when I have to, be away for work or when I have to travel or, it's having in my mind that what am I missing, and the heartbreak of, potentially not being there when my family or my kids especially need me the most. And I think that I struggle with that, knowing again my dad worked at least two jobs for 30 years, and so I had a very distant relationship with my dad growing up. And when he passed away, that was one of my biggest regrets was not building a closer relationship and not getting to know him, as a person and how he grew up, even more. It's you don't cherish those things until oftentimes they're gone, right? And so I think that's what I struggle with the most, Pedro. And of course, being the eldest and seeing him suffer, towards the end of his life and having to make decisions for his health, and whether it's hospice care or to stop dialysis treatments, things like that. uh those are traumatizing, and those, I still carry that up to this day, my friend, and I cry when I think about those things, because you know as we get older, it's only a matter of time before our kids, are have to make those decisions as well. So, it's the circle of life. And yeah, it's challenging.
Thank you for sharing that. And if you have like a message for your dad right now, what would you tell your dad?
Well, aside from that, I love him. It's to thank him for his sacrifice, Pedro. I think it's to thank him for, doing what he needed to do to make sure that we were okay. And even when he wasn't working, when he knew he was going only with 3 or 4 hours of sleep, he would still take the time to attend as many of our activities or to support us, and always said how proud he was of us. And so to just thank him for trying despite the sacrifices he had to make sure we were okay, and to put food on the table. So that's what I would tell him.
And he is so proud of you.
Appreciate that.
Particularly with what you achieve, and then also with the heart and cornerstone of every Filipino is the love for the family. And
Right.
when we all talk about family, I think
Yeah.
everybody has this sweet spot in us, and everybody can relate to that. We will
Yeah,
cry when it's all about family, right?
that's right. That's right, Pedro.
Thank you, Dr. Rain. And then from that experience, that sir was telling me that you have a little bit of distant relationship. What are you doing right now to break that cycle that your relationship with your dad was not that tight?
Yeah.
How are you doing that right now? And what will be your advice for those fathers like me? I'm a younger father too of twins. Um, in order for to create like meaningful connections with their kids while they're juggling school, work, they're juggling their relationship. How does that play into role?
Yeah, no, and it goes back to what we were
Mm,
talking about earlier, Pedro, of authentic presence.
mm,
Just like we have to have authentic presence with, ourselves, our patients, our colleagues, authentic presence carries over into those, times with our kids, with our loved ones as well. And not to be afraid to say, I love you, and I'm proud of you, and are you okay?
mm.
And I noticed, I saw your grades, and to ask them questions. And so, when we're at the dinner table, it's for me to not have my phone anywhere close to me or my computer open. If they're asking me a question or they want to play catch or go to a movie, or the answer isn't I'm too busy or I have a project. It's of course, because you're the most important person, and to me right now. And so I think it's being purposeful and being authentically present in those, because we remember the small things much more than what Christmas gifts we got or what birthday gifts we got. The things we'll remember as kids, right? And of our parents is the time that we spend together. The time you taught them how to tie their shoes or ride a bike, or a lot of the life lessons and stories that you can tell them about when you were growing up, and how you navigated those challenges in life, getting to know their friends, and to know and to show their friends that that I'm a dad who's engaged and available, and there when they need me as well. So it's just taking the time and being purposeful and authentically present, I think, my friend, and keeping it simple as much as possible.
I love it. And I've always hear this like presence over presence,
Yeah,
right? Because we
that's right.
always tend to, give gifts on birthday, Christmas to our
Right.
kids, but sometimes it's the presence that they're looking for, right? It's not the material things,
Right. It's
but
priceless.
it's the memories, the way you talk to them. Are you on your phone? Are you answering phone calls while you're talking to them? I think A lot of dads could definitely relate with that, and it's a wake up call that time flies so fast.
It does. It does. And you know how we try to multitask, right? And multitasking is, speaking of studies, there's so many studies that show multitasking, you're actually less productive because you're not fully engaged in what you're doing at any given time. And so it's the same thing, I think, with those conversations with your kids or with your loved ones. It's if you're trying to do other things or if your mind is somewhere else when you're trying to have an important conversation, you're not really there, and they notice and they know that, oh, I'm going to stop talking because your mind is obviously somewhere else,
Mm.
and it's obvious. And those, unfortunately, are also things that they'll remember, right? And so,
Yes.
yeah,
Thank you for that gentle reminder. And as they said, like, Dad, I was talking to you, but you were doing multiple things. So I just shut up. I just
yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
talk anymore.
Or I
I
won't
think
even
they
say anything anymore. Yeah,
I think they remember that. So this is will be a general realization to take a pause, to be mindful and presence over
that's
presence
right.
over gifts. And wow, I'm learning so much from this today and hope a lot of dads out there that are also working hard to provide for their families. It's not all about financial obligations, but also being a dad and being present is very
That's right.
important.
And then, as a nurse too, it's they ask you what do you do for a living, and to be able to explain it to them, that hopefully it encourages them. It shows that you're happy in what you do and you're proud of what you do. They meet your coworkers and who you work with, and they can tell their friends. They have these events, like, right, Pedro, that take your dad to school day, or career day or whatever. And so it's you share as much of what you do and your profession with your kids as well, so that they understand, and are proud of what you do, as well, so that if their friends or their teachers or something ask them, so what does your dad actually do? It's funny, when I went into nursing leadership, when my middle son was in, I think, the kindergarten. He had a piece of paper. The teacher, asked, so what does your dad do? Describe it. And what he wrote down, Pedro, is, my dad pushes papers. And so for me, that was a sign of, should, share my job and what I do for a living. Because when they see you at home, working at home, or they
Yeah.
see you, on your computer and with forms and papers, so that's what they see, right? And so that was a wake up call for me.
And the kids don't have like filter. They will just say
No,
whatever they
they
saw and
they
whatever
call
they
it as it
observed.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm also seeing a trend that parents are nurses, but the kids, they don't want to be nurses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it that they're seeing as nurses multitasking, being outside home all the time, working on the holidays, that they think like, oh my God, I don't want to be that person that is always missing out on all the holidays
You
and
never
working a
know.
lot
Yeah.
of hours. Am I
That's
correct?
right. That's right. And there's and
Okay.
there's so many opportunities now. I mean, the amount of people who are entrepreneurs and influencers online, and they're working, and they're resellers of thrift products, or on eBay making, I mean, there's so many of these new opportunities and jobs in just the technology industry in itself, that, I don't know if it's they don't want to become nurses, or there are just so many opportunities elsewhere now that they're attracted to what they grew up. I mean, kids nowadays are so digital that, in nursing, like you said, it's an art and a science. And so you still have to be able to, work with people and, be in those moments with people. And so if that's not the experience, or that's not the passion of someone, then, the likelihood of them coming into nursing is pretty low. So
Thank you, Dr. Rain, for those realizations and sharing your opinions on certain topics that we discussed today. if this episode reaches out to somebody who is struggling with their mental health or can relate that, oh my God, I resonate with what they're telling us, what will be the message that you want to tell them?
Oh gosh, again, it goes back to just stay connected to your purpose. Just know that every moment counts. Like you said earlier, perfectly, Pedro. We lament about the past and we worry about the future so much that it just squeezes us out of the present. And so be in the present, celebrate, enjoy, and learn, continue to learn, enjoy, the moments, because those are what matters, my friend. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And I'm so proud of you. Where can people follow you? By LinkedIn or by your social media? So if they want to connect with you and know more about what you do for your Caring Science Academy.
Yeah, no, LinkedIn definitely is probably the best place, because I have, our websites there, and just stay connected, and hopefully I see you at a conference or, at an event or a potluck or at Pedro's house or, wherever we're partying next, right, Pedro? So.
And thank you. You know what? When I met you, the positivity, the energy, the way you smile and the way you talk to me, and your lessons for me of being a new dad. I have a toddler. They're turning 2 years old, leap year babies. I think that's something that I learned from this podcast, and I hope other followers that are working in the healthcare, you could be other non-nurses, or it could be somebody that resonates with our experience. And thank you for tuning in. Once again, there you go, Dr. Rayne Soriano in the house. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, and good luck with all your future endeavors. I know you'll do a lot of great things this year. 2026 is a great year for us.
That's right, Pedro. Cheers to you and more prosperity and blessings as well.
Thank you, Dr. Rayne. I hope you visit LA and I visit Oahu one of these days.
Thanks for listening to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante. Be sure to follow the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. If you find value in our time together, leave a quick review. It helps more people discover the space we're creating. For updates and more reflections, follow us on social media. Until next time, take care.